I was unaware that someone at the age of 80 could possess such remarkable skills in Tales from Reddit, A True Infidelity Story. I never thought I would find myself in a situation that tested my loyalty, especially not with someone so unforeseen. From a young age, I was instilled with the values of loyalty, the sacredness of marriage, and the conviction that love alone could tether two souls through life's trials and tribulations. Yet, existence possesses a remarkable ability to humble you, peeling away your ideals until you stand before the stark, unembellished reality. What I would soon uncover was a truth far more grotesque than I had ever dared to envision. My name is Rachel, and this is the tale of my betrayal, a moment when I made a decision that changed everything between me and my boss, leading to the unraveling of everything I cherished. David and I have shared 15 years of marriage together. In the bustling chaos of New York City, we crossed paths in our late 20s, both driven professionals charting our ambitious courses. He was an accomplished architect, possessing a keen intellect and a reserved presence, while I was a marketing executive who took great pride in my talent for understanding others. We were the couple that sparked envy in others, the ones who still intertwined our fingers at gatherings and shared laughter over each other's quips. That was the conviction I held. 5 years ago, the fissures in our marriage started to reveal themselves, though I suspect they had always existed, hidden just beneath the surface. David grew increasingly aloof, dedicating extensive hours to his job and even more to his computer screen. Initially, I attributed it to the pressures of stress. His role was challenging, and he faced significant pressure to excel. Yet, as the months unfurled into years, the chasm between us widened. Our conversations dwindled, transforming into a series of courteous exchanges and shallow dialogues, devoid of the depth we once shared. How did your day unfold? Very well. Have you collected the dry cleaning yet? Indeed, we existed in a space that felt more like cohabitants than partners bound by marriage. I endeavored to close the distance, to rekindle the flame that had once shone so vividly between us. I proposed the notion of couples therapy, yet David brushed it aside, asserting that it was unnecessary for us. I envisioned romantic evenings together, yet he consistently discovered reasons to back out. I made an effort to add some excitement to our intimate moments, yet he dismissed my advances, asserting that he was simply too fatigued. He seemed to have constructed an impenetrable barrier around his very being. Despite my relentless efforts, I found myself unable to penetrate the barrier. Yet I never imagined I would betray that trust. Infidelity was an occurrence reserved for others, never for us. A life had been woven together, a family formed. Our aspirations and visions were intertwined. How could I possibly discard all of that? Yet, as the adage suggests, hindsight offers clarity, and in retrospect, the indicators were unmistakable. The long hours spent at the office, the unexpected focus on my looks, the growing desire for affirmation from other men. In that moment, I convinced myself that my intentions were merely friendly, that perhaps I was overanalyzing the situation. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that something was amiss. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in October when the tipping point arrived. David returned home late, as was his custom, retreating into his study under the pretense of unfinished work. As I stood in the kitchen, tidying up the remnants of dinner, a sudden buzz from my phone caught my attention. A message arrived from my boss, a figure I had long held in high regard. Walter was his name, and he held the esteemed position of CEO at the company where I was employed. At 80 years old, he possessed the vigor and determination of a person merely half his age. "May we engage in a conversation?" The words were inscribed. My heart fluttered as I gazed at the screen. Walter and I had always maintained a solid working relationship, yet recently, his behavior had taken on an unusual quality. More engaged, nearly playful. Uncertainty clouded my thoughts, yet I was acutely aware that I could not turn a blind eye to him. "Absolutely," I typed, my fingers quivering with anticipation. "When will it be?" "At this very moment," he responded. "I find myself in the open air." A surge of panic washed over me as I absorbed the words of the message. What could possibly be so urgent that he felt the need to speak with me at this very moment? I hastily snatched my coat and stepped outside, discovering him seated in his car, his complexion ashen and weary. "Walter, what troubles you?" I inquired as I settled into the passenger seat. He inhaled deeply, his hands trembling. "Rachel, there's a matter I must share with you. A revelation I should have shared with you ages ago." A knot of dread twisted in my stomach. What could it be? He paused for a moment before responding. "I'm not merely your boss. I am your father." The words struck me with the force of a gut-wrenching blow. It was as if the very earth beneath my feet had been violently torn away. "What do you mean by that?" Inquire, my voice trembling. "My mother and I." He explained that we weren't together at the time of your birth. When we crossed paths, she was already expecting. I nurtured you as if you were my own, driven by my love for her and my love for you. However, I am not your biological father. A wave of emotions washed over me: anger, confusion, and a profound, aching sadness. How could he have concealed this from me for such an extended period? How could he have deceived me for my entire existence? Who is my true father? I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a murmur. He gently shook his head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes.
"I'm uncertain."
My mother never mentioned it to me. She remarkable that it was preferable for us to remain unaware. Tears began to gather in my eyes as the gravity of his words settled within me. Every facet of my existence had been shrouded in deception. All that I believed to be true about myself and my family turned out to be a misconception. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I ought to have shared this with you earlier. I simply lacked the knowledge of how to proceed." Words eluded me. It was as if my entire existence had been flipped on its head, leaving me with the haunting realization that nothing would ever return to its former state. The ensuing days unfolded in a whirlwind of feelings. I struggled to comprehend what Walter, no, my stepfather, had revealed to me, yet it felt overwhelming to absorb. I found myself wandering, untethered, as if my sense of self had slipped away into the ether. And then, on a night like no other, something shifted. The evening when everything transformed began just like any other. As was his custom, David found himself toiling away into the late hours of the night. Alone in the house, I sought refuge from the tempest of emotions that had engulfed me ever since Walter's revelation. The words he had shared lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. That he was not merely my superior, but also my stepfather, and that the foundation of my entire existence had been constructed upon a deception. I found myself wandering in a haze, uncertain of my own identity. As I lounged on the couch, my gaze fixed on the television yet devoid of true engagement, my phone vibrated, breaking the stillness. A message arrived from Walter. "May I pay you a visit? It's time for a conversation." My heart raced as I absorbed the words of the message. Words eluded me. A part of me yearned to express my desire for solitude, to convey that I required time to sift through the whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. Yet, there existed another facet of my being, one that eluded complete comprehension, yearning to encounter him, to listen to his voice, to experience a trace of the steadiness he had consistently offered. "All right," I typed with trembling fingers. He appeared moments later, his expression mirroring the turmoil within me. He settled onto the couch beside me. His hands were intertwined firmly in his lap. "Rachel, I'm truly sorry," he murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. "My intentions were never to cause you pain." I found myself at a loss for words when it came to revealing the truth to you. Tears began to gather in my eyes as I gazed at him. The man who had once been my mentor, my protector, and my boss for as long as my memory served, now stood before me as a complete stranger. And yet, there was an essence about him, a sense of familiarity, a soothing presence that compelled me to extend my hand toward him, to grasp him tightly, to alleviate the ache within. "I don't know what to do," I confessed, my voice trembling. "It seems as though the entirety of my existence has been shrouded in deception." He extended his hand and grasped mine, his hold both strong and tender. "I remain your superior, Rachel. Regardless of the circumstances, my support for you remains unwavering." His words were meant to bring solace, yet they fell short. Instead, they awakened a profound sensation within me, something shadowy, something perilous. A torrent of emotions surged within me: anger, confusion, and a profound, aching sadness enveloped my heart. Yet, hidden beneath the surface, there lingered an elusive essence, a feeling I struggled to articulate. In a moment that felt both fleeting and eternal, I found myself leaning in during an emotionally charged moment. It was a wild, spontaneous decision, driven by an urgent desire to experience something, anything, apart from the anguish and turmoil that had been engulfing me. Yet, the moment our lips met, I realized there was no turning back. Walter paused, his body rigid with uncertainty, yet soon he returned my kiss. His hands glided to my waist, drawing me nearer. It was a mistake, a grave one, yet in that fleeting instant, I felt no concern. The essence of it all lay in the emotions he stirred within me, yearned for, sought after, and vibrant. As we finally separated, a surge of regret and self-reflection overtook me, yet it was swiftly eclipsed by the exhilarating rush of the moment we had just shared. I was acutely aware that I ought to halt, to distance myself from him and feign that it had never transpired. Yet, I found myself unable to do so. I had no desire to. "Rachel, we can't do this," Walter said, his voice quivering with emotion. "It is incorrect." "I understand," I responded, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Yet it holds no significance for me." With that, I pressed my lips to his once more, my hands gliding to his chest, sensing the rhythmic pulse of his heart beneath my fingertips. He paused for a heartbeat, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but soon surrendered, his fingers weaving into my hair, drawing me nearer, intensifying the kiss. What followed was a whirlwind of emotion and confusion that rendered me gasping and quaking. It was misguided, undeniably misguided, yet in that fleeting instant it felt undeniably correct. Seemed to be the sole remedy for the ache that lingered. As the moment came to a close, I found myself nestled in his embrace, my head gently placed upon his chest, attuned to the soothing cadence of his heartbeat. A wave of emotions washed over me: guilt, shame, and a profound, lingering sadness. Yet, hidden beneath the surface, there lay something more, an elusive notion that escaped my grasp. "Rachel, we can't go through this once more," Walter said, his voice trembling. "It is incorrect. We have erred." He was undoubtedly correct. I was acutely aware of the wrongness of our actions, a certainty that this could never be repeated. Yet, as the weight of guilt enveloped me, I found it impossible to ignore the exhilarating rush of the events that had unfolded, and that filled me with a deeper fear than anything else could. The ensuing days unfolded in a haze of tumultuous feelings. I endeavored to shove the events into the recesses of my thoughts, to feign that they had never transpired. Yet, the harder I endeavored to erase it from my mind, the more it lingered, occupying my thoughts incessantly. Walter embodied all the qualities that David lacked. Vibrant, assured, and brimming with vitality, he stirred emotions within me that had long lain dormant. The subsequent occurrence was even more intense. Once more, we found ourselves alone in the house, the air thick with unspoken tension between us. This time, we found ourselves caught in a moment that overwhelmed all reason, that was entirely foreign to my encounters with David. Filled me with joy, yet the guilt lingered, a shadow in the recesses of my thoughts, poised to emerge during the stillness of solitude. The nights were the hardest, as I lay beside David, attuned to the steady cadence of his breath. He remained completely oblivious to my actions. He had no inkling that the woman beside him was leading a life shrouded in secrecy. And thus, the weight of guilt became even more unbearable. A few weeks later, the first twist arrived in the form of a message from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, teetering on the edge of silence, yet an inexplicable urge compelled me to answer the call. "Hello?" my voice ventured, tinged with caution. "Is this Rachel?" A voice, distinctly feminine, inquired. It carried a gentle timidity, as if seeking forgiveness. "Yes," I replied, my heart racing. "Who is this?" There was a lengthy silence, and then the woman spoke. My name is Chloe. I believe we should have a conversation. My stomach sank. Chloe. The name was etched into my mind, a consequence of the messages I had discovered on Walter's phone. She was his girlfriend, the one he had been with for more than a year, the one he had taken on adventures and adorned with presents. What could she possibly desire from me? What do you want? I inquired, my voice cutting through the air more harshly than I had meant. I know about you and Walter, she replied, her tone laden with remorse. Initially, I was unaware, but I discovered it not long ago, and I thought you should know the truth. The truth. Those words sent a shiver through me. What revelation could possibly be more unsettling than what I already faced? Yet, I found myself unable to disconnect, unable to dismiss the chance to uncover the answers I sought. Meet me, I said, my voice unwavering despite the chaos within. Let's talk in person. We convened at a quaint cafe downtown, a serene spot where our words could flow freely, shielded from prying ears. Chloe appeared younger than I had anticipated, her long dark hair cascading around her shoulders, and her piercing green eyes holding a depth that intrigued me. She appeared anxious, her hands quivering as she mixed her coffee. I'm sorry, she uttered the moment we took our seats. At the outset of our relationship, I was unaware of his marital status. He confided in me that he had gone through a divorce. A wave of anger washed over me, yet I stifled it deep within. This was not Chloe's fault. She was merely another casualty in Walter's intricate tapestry of deceit. What do you mean you discovered the truth about me? She inquired, her tone direct and unyielding. After a moment's pause, she retrieved her phone and revealed a sequence of messages. They hailed from Walter, the man whose name had first graced my phone. He reached out to me a few weeks ago, Chloe elucidated. He believed it was important for me to be aware that he was involved with both of us. And who knows how many others? I scrolled through the messages, my heart sinking with each word. Walter had been just as blindsided as Chloe, just as wounded by the betrayal. Yet, there was something more lurking within those messages, something that sent a chill through my veins. Walter had alluded to a clandestine bank account, one that served as the financial backbone of his duplicitous existence. Are you aware of this? I inquired, presenting Chloe with the emails I had discovered on Walter's phone. Her eyes grew wide as she perused the pages. No, she replied, her head shaking gently. But it does make sense. He consistently displayed remarkable generosity, showering me with lavish gifts and whisking me away on delightful journeys. I never pondered the origins of the money. Neither had I. Walter had consistently demonstrated a knack for managing money, always meticulous in maintaining the integrity of our finances. Yet, I found myself increasingly questioning the extent of his expenditures on that hidden existence of his. A few days later, an unexpected twist arrived in the form of a letter in the mail. A message had arrived from a private investigator, an individual entirely unfamiliar to me. The correspondence was succinct and direct. I possess information that could pique your interest concerning your husband. Kindly reach out to me at your earliest convenience. A whirlwind of thoughts engulfed me. Was there another soul probing into Walter's affairs? Or was this merely a ruse? Yet, my insatiable curiosity compelled me to dial the number. David, the investigator, had been engaged by one of Walter's former colleagues. Your husband has been embezzling funds from his company, David revealed. He has been channeling funds into offshore accounts, utilizing them to finance his escapades and extravagant way of living. His boss grew wary and enlisted my help to investigate. It was as if the very earth had been torn away from beneath my feet. Embezzlement, offshore accounts. This revelation was far more significant than I had ever envisioned. Walter was not merely a deceiver. He was a criminal. What happens now? I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. The company is preparing to press charges, David replied, but I thought you should know before it all comes out. You might want to protect yourself and your kids. Protect myself. The words reverberated in my mind as I ended the call. What measures can I take to safeguard myself from this situation? What steps can I take to shield my children from the consequences of their father's choices? That night, the final twist unfolded as Walter returned home from work. He appeared weary, his complexion wan and taut, yet there was an unsettling depth in his gaze that twisted my stomach. Apprehension. "We need to talk," he said, his voice quivering with uncertainty. "We do," I conceded, my voice unwavering and frigid. "Yet, this place is different. Let's keep this conversation away from the children." We entered the study, gently shutting the door behind us. In that fleeting moment, silence enveloped us both. Then Walter shattered the stillness. "I'm in trouble," he murmured, his voice a fragile thread in the air. "Big trouble." "I know," I replied, folding my arms tightly across my chest. "I am aware of the embezzlement, Walter. I am aware of the offshore accounts. I am aware of everything." His complexion drained of color, and for an instant, he resembled a man who had just received a verdict of doom. "Rachel, I deeply regret this," he uttered, his voice trembling. "I never intended for any of this to unfold. My sole aim was to hold everything together, to ensure our family was taken care of. In the act of stealing from your company, I felt my anger reach a boiling point. The betrayal of your lies, the deceit in your actions, and the jeopardy you've placed upon our family weigh heavily on my heart. Do you even comprehend the magnitude of your actions?" He remained silent. He stood there, shoulders drooping in resignation. In that instant, a painful truth washed over me, shattering my heart anew. The man I had wed, the one I had cherished through countless years, was no longer there. In his absence stood an unfamiliar figure, a person I could not identify and had no desire to understand. The days preceding the crescendo were a tempest of feelings, each more fervent than the one before. I engaged a lawyer to safeguard myself and the children, and together we embarked on the arduous journey of unraveling the chaos that Walter had left in his wake. It was a draining experience, both mentally and emotionally, yet I understood the necessity of remaining resolute. For the sake of my children, for myself. The most startling moment arrived on a chilly, overcast afternoon in late November. I found myself in the kitchen, attempting to concentrate on preparing dinner, when the doorbell chimed. My heart raced unexpectedly. The arrival of an unanticipated visitor loomed before me, and the prospect of confronting yet another stranger, yet another harbinger of unwelcome tidings, sent a shiver of apprehension through my veins. Nevertheless, I inhaled deeply, dried my palms on a towel, and steeled myself to open the door. On the porch stood two men clad in dark suits, their faces etched with seriousness. One of them raised a badge, a silent proclamation of authority. "Mrs. Claire Thompson?" he inquired, his tone crisp and impersonal. "Yes," I replied, my throat parched. "What's this about?" "We're with the FBI," the other man stated. "We must have a conversation with your husband, Walter Thompson. Is he present?" The statement landed on me like a blow to the stomach. The FBI? What could they possibly want with Walter? My thoughts raced, yet I compelled myself to maintain composure. "He's not here right now," I stated, my voice unwavering even as anxiety surged within me. "Can you tell me what this is about?" The first agent shared a glance with his partner before nodding. "Your spouse is currently the subject of an investigation concerning embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. There are substantial grounds to suspect his involvement in illicit financial dealings spanning several years. It is imperative that we have a conversation with him without delay." The sensation was akin to the earth being torn away beneath my feet. I was aware of the embezzlement, courtesy of the private investigator, but money laundering? Fraud? This was an enormity beyond anything I had ever envisioned. I have no idea where he is," I confessed, my voice quaking. "He departed this morning, leaving no indication of his destination." The agents shared a knowing look, and the second one moved closer. "Mrs. Thompson, your cooperation is essential. This is a grave situation, and every moment counts. Should you possess any details that might assist us in finding your husband, now is the moment to reveal them." I nodded, my thoughts swirling in a tempest. "Certainly," I replied. "However, I truly have no idea of his whereabouts. He has seemed quite aloof recently. I have yet to make contact with him. The initial agent provided me with a card. Should you hear from him or recall any details that might assist us, I urge you to call this number without delay. As we awaited their arrival, the urgency of the moment gripped me. I stepped aside, my heart racing, as the agents crossed the threshold of the house. They navigated the space with meticulous care, their eyes darting to every shadow, every detail. I felt like an outsider in my own home, as if I were merely an observer to a cinematic drama playing out before me. The agents dedicated hours to sifting through our possessions, hunting for any trace that might connect Walter to his misdeeds. They confiscated his computer, his documents, even his phone, the very device that had ignited this nightmare. I found myself in the living room, a cup of tea in hand, its warmth a distant memory, as I struggled to comprehend the unfolding events. Yet, the true revelation arrived later that evening, once the agents had departed. There I was, perched on the couch, eyes fixed on the wall, when my phone vibrated, breaking the silence. A message from an unfamiliar number appeared on my screen. My heart raced as I tapped to reveal its contents. "Rachel, it's me. I require your assistance." It was Walter. My hands shook as I composed a reply. "Where are you?" "The FBI was here. They're searching for you." A lengthy silence followed, and then another message arrived. "I understand. I'm in a predicament, Rachel. A serious predicament. I implore you to meet me, please." I found myself fixated on the screen, my thoughts swirling in a tempest. A fragment of my being yearned to dismiss him, to allow him to confront the repercussions of his choices. Yet, another fragment, the one that still held onto the memory of the man I had once adored, found it impossible to abandon him. "Not just yet." "Where?" I typed, my fingers trembling with anticipation. He replied with an address, a place on the fringes of the city. It was an isolated location, shielded from curious gazes. Uncertainty loomed over me, yet a compelling urge propelled me forward. I had to confront him, to listen to his narrative, even if this encounter divided our final chapter. I entrusted the children to a neighbor, fabricating a tale of urgency, and set off towards the location Walter had provided. The roads lay desolate, the sky cloaked in a somber shroud of clouds. It was as if the world itself paused, suspended in anticipation of an impending event. Upon my arrival, I spotted Walter's car nestled in a discreet corner, concealed from prying eyes. He stood beside it, his face ashen and taut, his eyes brimming with despair. He resembled a soul teetering on the brink, a figure who had forfeited all and had naught left to sacrifice. "Rachel," he uttered as I drew near, his voice quaking. "Thank you for your presence." "What's happening, Walter?" I inquired, my tone unwavering and frigid. "What have you done?" He inhaled deeply, his hands trembling. "I messed up," he confessed, his voice trembling. "I messed up big time. I thought I could make it right, but now it's too late. They are pursuing me, Rachel. The FBI, the corporation, everyone. I am at a loss for what to do. You must turn yourself in," I stated, my voice resolute. "It's the only way." He shook his head, panic evident in his eyes. "I cannot. Should I proceed, I would find myself imprisoned for the entirety of my existence. Everything I hold dear would be lost. I'll lose you." "You already have," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "You lost me the moment you chose to betray, to deceive, to take what wasn't yours. Walter, you have made your choices. Now you must confront the consequences." He gazed at me, his expression a haunting blend of anguish and remorse. For a fleeting instant, I anticipated a rebuttal, a plea for my assistance. Yet, as if the weight of the world bore down upon him, his shoulders sagged, and he acquiesced. "You're right," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "My apologies, Rachel, for all that has transpired." Just as I was about to reply, a sound pierced the air, a distant wail of sirens, steadily intensifying with every fleeting moment. Walter's eyes grew wide, and he instinctively stepped back. "They're here," he exclaimed, panic lacing his voice. "I have to go." "Walter, wait," she called, But it was too late. He turned and fled, vanishing into the shadows. The moments that followed became a haze. The FBI agents descended upon the scene, their vehicles coming to a jarring stop as they encircled the vicinity. They interrogated me, their tones cutting and insistent, yet my mind was elsewhere. My thoughts were consumed by Walter, fleeing into the darkness, a man escaping the consequences of his own choices. As I navigated the familiar roads toward home, my thoughts spun wildly, grappling with the weight of recent events. It struck me with a force that fractured the remnants of my heart. The person I once trusted and built a future with had vanished. In his stead stood an unfamiliar figure, a stranger whose essence felt foreign and unwelcome. The weeks that ensued after Walter vanished were shrouded in a haze of courtroom skirmishes, relentless media attention, and profound emotional upheaval. The FBI's probe into his dealings revealed a labyrinth of deception so extensive and complex that it captured the nation's headlines. Embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. The allegations continued to accumulate, each more incriminating than the one before. Amidst the chaos, I found myself tasked with the daunting responsibility of reconstructing a life that had been irrevocably broken. The most challenging aspect was finding the words to convey the truth to the children. How does one explain to their young hearts that their father has become a fugitive, evading the very justice that should protect them? I endeavored to cushion the impact, to protect them from the harsh realities. Yet their perceptiveness surpassed my expectations. They sensed that something was amiss, and they were entitled to the truth, or at least the portion of it that I could muster the courage to reveal. One evening, perched on the edge of my daughter's bed, I told them, "Your dad made some poor decisions. He's in a difficult situation, and he must confront the repercussions. Regardless of the circumstances, I want you to understand that my love for you remains unwavering, and my support is steadfast." Always, they handled it better than I anticipated, yet I could still perceive the pain in their eyes, the bewilderment, and the simmering anger. They were too young to grasp the full weight of the situation, yet they sensed the sting of betrayal. That realization shattered my heart more than anything else. As the days morphed into weeks, I found myself wrestling with a tangle of emotions that eluded my understanding. Anger coursed through me, directed at Walter for his actions, for the deceit, the betrayal, and the hurt he had inflicted. Yet, intertwined with that fury was a profound sadness, a heavy sorrow for the life we once envisioned, for the dreams we had nurtured, and for the future that would remain forever out of reach. And beneath these tumultuous emotions, there lingered a glimmer of an unexpected feeling, something I had not anticipated. Relief washed over me, an odd sensation that I found difficult to embrace. Yet it lingered undeniable. The truth had emerged from the shadows, and with it came the liberation of no longer having to feign normalcy. A sense of liberation washed over me, unburdening my soul from the heavy cloak of Walter's secrets and the relentless anxiety of the unknown. Yet, the journey of beginning anew proved to be a formidable challenge. The legal struggles consumed me, sapping my resources and testing my emotional resilience. In the end, I found myself compelled to sell the house, to simplify our lives, and to embrace sacrifices I never imagined I would face. It was, without a doubt, a humbling experience, yet it also brought a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt a renewed sense of control over my own life, making choices for myself and my children, rather than for another's agenda. And then there arose the enigma of Walter. Where could he be? What had transpired? The FBI had initiated a manhunt, yet their efforts had yielded no results. There were naturally rumors, sightings in various cities, murmurs of his escape beyond borders, but nothing of substance emerged. A fragment of my heart yearned for him to surrender, to confront the repercussions of his deeds and ultimately embrace accountability for his choices. Yet, another part of me wished for his eternal absence, for him to vanish completely and grant us the tranquility we sought. It was a tangled emotion, one that I found difficult to untangle. How is it possible to still harbor feelings for someone who has inflicted such profound pain? How can love linger for the man who shattered our family? The answers elude me, perhaps forever. Yet, one truth stands unwavering. I refused to allow his missteps to shape my identity. I had to forge ahead, both for my own sake and for my children. The pivotal moment arrived one evening as I sat on the porch of our new, more modest home, observing the sun dip below the horizon. The children were indoors, engrossed in their homework, and for the first time in what felt like ages, a wave of tranquility washed over me. It wasn't quite happiness, not at this moment, but it was something akin to it. A gentle acceptance, a profound sense of tranquility enveloped me. As I lingered in that space, a realization dawned upon me, one that had slipped through my fingers for far too long. I discovered a strength within me that I had never recognized before. I had endured the most harrowing experience imaginable, yet here I was, still upright. I had painstakingly reconstructed my existence from its very foundations. Though it bore its imperfections, it belonged to me, and that sufficed. The future remained shrouded in uncertainty. Naturally, legal battles loomed ahead, bills awaited payment, and wounds needed tending. Yet, for the first time in ages, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Hope that I could forge a new existence for myself and my children. A foundation rooted in honesty, trust, and love. A hopeful yearning that, in time, the pain would diminish and the scars would mend. And as for Walter, uncertainty loomed over his future, yet my concern had waned. He had charted his own course, and now the consequences were his alone to face. Whether he found himself ensnared by the law or continued to evade it, whether he confronted his fate or vanished into obscurity, the weight of it was no longer mine to carry. The sun sank beneath the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I inhaled deeply, sensing the burdens of the past few months ease just a bit. This wasn't the conclusion of the tale, far from it, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. At last, I was prepared to craft my narrative in my own way.